Hello everyone, I got 6 dirty jokes for you today. A young and enthusiastic teacher named Miss Mary was in the process of teaching her first grade class, full of 6-year-old students, about the importance and virtues of sharing with others. During her heartfelt lesson, she pointed out to the class that there wasn't a single person in the world who possessed everything they ever wanted. As she made this point, she noticed a small arm waving frantically from the back of the room. She tried her best to overlook it, but the persistent arm belonged to little Tommy, who started blurting out, "Miss Mary, Miss Mary," while his arm waved like a flag in a hurricane. Finally, she relented. "All right, Tommy, what is it that you want to say?" On being acknowledged, little Tommy got up from his chair and announced to the entire class, "Miss Mary, at our house, we have everything." The teacher, a bit taken aback, responded, "That's not possible, Tommy. Even the wealthiest person in the world doesn't have everything they desire." Undeterred, Tommy answered back, "But we do. My daddy confirmed it just the other day." Now quite intrigued, Miss Mary asked, "And why would your father say something like that, Tommy?" "Well," Tommy began, "my older sister, who's 15, came home the other day with her boyfriend, who has a shaved head, and told Dad that she's going to have a baby. And that's when my dad sighed heavily and said, 'Lord, that was the last thing we needed.'" An elderly gentleman named Alfred strolls into a bustling bank one day and declares to the woman working at the service counter, "I wish to start a darn savings account immediately." The woman, surprised and a little shocked, responds, "I'm sorry, sir. I must have heard you wrong. Could you repeat what you just said?" With a raised voice, the old man retorts, "Pay attention, for heaven's sake. I said I wish to start a darn savings account right this instant." The service representative, feeling uncomfortable, says, "I deeply apologize, sir, but we don't accept that kind of language in our bank." Choosing not to engage any further with the old man, the woman leaves her counter and approaches the bank manager to explain the situation they have on their hands. After hearing the issue, the bank manager decides to handle the situation himself. Both he and the service representative return to the service counter, and the manager politely inquires, "Sir, could you please tell me what the issue seems to be here?" The old man then shouts, "I just won a $50 million in the bloomin' lottery, and all I want to do is open a darn savings account in this bloomin' bank." Now understanding the situation, the bank manager responds, "Ah, I see, and this fool is giving you a hard time." A redneck named Buck from the heart of Kentucky finally ties the knot. When the day of his wedding comes to an end and night falls, he walks into the bedroom to find his new bride wearing the most enticing piece of lingerie he's ever seen. His bride gazes at him with love and whispers, "I want you to understand that you are my first and will be my only man." Quick as a flash, Buck changes his mind about the evening's activities. Looking angry and frustrated, he swiftly helps his wife back into her clothes, hoists her into his old pickup truck, and drives her straight back to her parents' home, where he leaves her on the doorstep. Just a few minutes later, his phone rings. It's his wife's father, clearly confused and concerned, calling to ask what went wrong. With a tone of absolute certainty, Buck responds, "Well, if she ain't good enough for her own kin, then she sure as heck ain't good enough for mine." During a classroom discussion, the teacher was focusing on understanding the diverse professions that the students' parents were involved in. She believed that this would help the students understand the vast range of jobs available in the world. When it was young Johnny's turn, the teacher turned to him and questioned, "So, Johnny, what line of work is your father in?" Johnny promptly responded, "Oh, he's a professional magician, ma'am." Intrigued by this, the teacher responded, "Really? That's fascinating. What's his most impressive magic trick?" Without missing a beat, Johnny said, "His most amazing trick is the one where he saws people in half. He's very good at it." This made the teacher exclaim in delight, "That's simply amazing. What a unique profession." She then thought for a moment before adding, "So, Johnny, are there other children in your family, like brothers and sisters?" Without any hesitation, Johnny nodded and said, "Yes, there are, ma'am. In fact, I have one half-brother and two half-sisters." In a quiet town, a rancher named Joe saunters into a bar. He casually orders a glass of whiskey to enjoy after a long day of work. As he is leisurely sipping his drink, a young woman takes a seat right next to him. She looks at Joe with curiosity and then asks him, "Do you happen to be an actual rancher?" He responds, "Well, my entire life has been dedicated to running a ranch. I've been responsible for herding the horses, fixing the fences, and branding the cattle. So, in my mind, yes, I believe I am a legitimate rancher." In response, she says, "That's interesting. I identify as a lesbian. My entire day is filled with thoughts about women. The moment I wake up, my mind starts thinking about women. While I shower, watch TV, or do just about anything, everything seems to trigger thoughts of women." A short while after, a couple settles down next to Joe and poses the same question to him. "Are you a genuine rancher?" In reply, he says, "Well, until a little while ago, I was absolutely convinced that I was. But after hearing the young woman's story, I've come to realize that I'm a lesbian." One fine day, a mom named Patricia was strolling down the corridor when her ears caught a peculiar humming sound issuing from her daughter's room. Intrigued, she gently pushed open the door only to find her daughter Lucy, dressed quite lightly, lying on the bed with a vibrator. "Heavens above, Lucy! What are you doing?" she cried out. Lucy calmly looked at her mother and replied, "Mom, I'm already 35 and still living here in our home with you and Dad. This is the closest thing I'll probably ever have to a husband." Later that same week, Patricia's husband, George, was in the kitchen when a similar humming sound reached his ears. This time, the sound was coming from the basement. Curious, he decided to investigate. When he reached the basement, he found Lucy once again, dressed in light clothes, lounging on the sofa with her toy. "Goodness me, Lucy, what on earth are you doing?" he exclaimed. Lucy simply repeated her earlier sentiment. "Dad, I'm 35 and I still live at home with you guys. This is the closest thing I'll probably ever have to a husband." A few days later, Patricia heard the familiar humming sound again. This time, it was coming from the living room. And there, she found George sitting comfortably in front of the television with Lucy's toy buzzing beside him. She cried out, "Heavens, George, what are you doing?" With a grin, George replied, "Just watching the game with my son-in-law."